All right, so this is the second podcast of Ship Startup Festival 2024, and we have our lovely guest from Ireland and one of the judges of Pitch Captain Competition. Is as well the head of Department Organization and Professional Development at Theological Higher Education Association. And very warm welcome to Breda O'Dwyer. Did I pronounce it correctly this time?
O'Dwyer.
O'Dwyer, right. All right. Lovely to have you here. Thank you very much for coming. How are you feeling today?
So first, thanks very much for the invitation, and I'm absolutely delighted to be here and feeling really well. I sit here looking out at the window and I see the water.
Oh, yes.
It's what I see from my own home as well. So I feel
lovely.
at home, really.
Oh, that's lovely. And as you did just mention to me, that's not your first time in Finland, but definitely the first time that you've seen proper sun in a summery, manner.
Absolutely. I think I just recalled that I obviously have been to Finland on a number of occasions through different projects, and obviously they've been in the winter months.
Right.
Whereas it's my first time experiencing the sunshine, and it's fantastic.
It's fantastic indeed, and it's good to know that you have been here for the first time in Kotka.
Yes, and each time I guess I come to Finland, I'm inspired when I get here, I'm inspired when I'm here, and I've no doubt I'll be full of inspiration when I leave Kaakkois as well.
Definitely. So do tell us about your background. I mean, how did it all begin that you felt that, all right, business is something that, I want to get into, to study it, to be in the business ventures around the world?
I guess for me, I actually come from the womb of business.
Right.
So my background would be in the family business sector. So I've grown up at a table that would discuss business. We would have to try really hard at Christmas not to talk about the business.
All right.
So
interesting.
My first interaction with customers was at the age of 6.
Wow.
Which perhaps now would be considered child labour. But for me, it was a labour of love, and I've never stopped since then.
Right.
I've always been curious about, making things happen.
Right.
So I moved, yes, I was in the land of business, and I've moved into the area of entrepreneurship, but very much to try and change the narrative that talks about entrepreneurship as just being about setting up a business.
Right.
When it is so much more than that. But it's an opportunity to get involved. I have worked with age groups from the age of 6 to 60.
Right.
Looking at the different minds coming together, how people think, how people process. It's just everyday learning day, really.
Definitely. And regarding working from very different age groups, what would you say sets them apart, an entrepreneur? What is the mindset that you consider that, all right, this person could be an entrepreneur?
So fundamentally, I guess for me, it's been the sense of curiosity. And I've since gone on to do my own research and PhD on the entrepreneurial mindset. But I guess it was always looking at, and I still try to do it, to look at things through the eyes of a child, where children see everything as being possible. They have no problem in asking you the question and asking you the question repeatedly until they get the answer that they'd like to get. As we get older, we start to see more of the reasons not to do something.
Right.
We try to kind of talk ourselves out of it sometimes. And I guess it's when we start as well to realise that as children, you walk into a room as a child and you know nobody. Within 5 minutes, you're part of the group. You're part of that network, and that's something that I have to reinforce as you get to the older age groups. But then when you go full cycle and you're at the other side of it and you've got the older, maybe the aged entrepreneurs, they're back to that sense of it's all possible again, because they don't really care anymore. They don't have any inhibitions, and they're back to that childlike moment. And yet when you bring the child who sees everything as being possible and you bring the experience of the older person, it's eureka.
Right. So in a way, you would say that putting your mindset for an entrepreneur is not just the curiosity, but yet again, knowing that, everything is possible. So I can go for it.
100%. And for me, I guess I started because I was really tired of this conversation. Like I said, that it was only about setting up a business, and it really is much more than that. So when I started to look into it, I realized it was about the way I think. It's about the way I behave. It's about who I hang out with.
Right.
It's about the whole area of maybe saying that I can actually make this happen.
Right.
And I always thought it was about the identity. What was it like to be an entrepreneur, to say I am an entrepreneur? But when I actually did my research, I realized that wasn't the case at all. Identity got replaced with who am I?
Right.
Not identifying with being an entrepreneur, not identifying with entrepreneurship per se, but identifying with me. So that whole notion, a concept of self, was really, really important. That sense of self-belief, self-esteem.
And how would you say how much money as a factor is there for even having that mindset?
It doesn't matter, to be honest with you. And I don't mean to be flippant when I say that, but you will find money. You will find it when you need to find it.
Right.
But people, and again, if you talk to investors like we heard this morning from Hannah, people will invest in people. They don't invest in the business per se. They invest in the person because they know the person is the passion that will drive it forward.
Yeah.
So you will find it. Money, I've never allowed money to stop me, ever.
Right. I did come across knowing that you are part of developing the concept of self through interdisciplinary innovative learning practices. Could you please shed light on it a little more? That what is exactly is in the development process?
So I guess something, for me, the development process, the mindset, there's often this conversation, are entrepreneurs born or are they made? And for me, when you think about it only in the world of enterprise, then that may be a valuable discussion. But when you look at it as being a much bigger picture than that, then what you realize is that we are all born as entrepreneurs. We simply develop that mind as we go through life. Why and how? Because of our experience. All of our experiences, our professional experiences, our personal experiences will inform the mind. And what will happen is we'll have something happen to us, we'll sit back, we'll reflect, we'll learn from that. So when it happens again, I can build on the previous experience of how I made things better or worse and how I can prevent that happening or make it happen. So that's why it's developmental. It goes with you through life. And I can choose at any point in time during that life journey to engage, re-engage, or disengage with the mindset. It's my choice.
And how much do you think that the survival mindset is part of it? Because, for instance, if you come from a background that you basically are just living day to day on whatever food that you can acquire, even though you have ambitions, you have the mindset of, pushing yourself through and making a better living for yourself, but you don't have let's say the privilege of being around, sitting on a sofa, having a glass of wine and then going like, what an idea I have. How do you think that mindset kind of integrate into the entrepreneurship, or let's say having completely believe in yourself that, okay, I'm going to start this thing and it's going to go somewhere?
Because that to me is at its true core. So we can look at a survival. And I tend to always flip the coin. But I can flip survival to being resilient. Flip the coin. It shows the fact that we never give up.
Right.
And yes, I'm going to hear no. And yes, I'm going to hear judgment. And yes, I'm going to have to kind of rethink it. But that's what makes the idea stronger.
Right.
And the fact that I understand that it's not going to happen unless I make a move. So I can choose to sit on the couch and have my glass of wine and make it happen and let it happen. And it may happen, but not to an optimal level. But as somebody who may not have such privilege, I've understood it will happen if action takes place.
Right.
And when you see action happening, isn't that inspirational? And then you on board. And then you have the team.
Exactly. Lovely. Moving on to the next point that I had in mind, that, reading a little bit about you earlier and today as well, I've been very curious to know, like, how important it is to build a team around you.
It's one of those things whereby that, if we think we can do it on our own, yeah, we can. We sure can.
Sure.
But, being out there in the land of entrepreneurial landscape, it's a journey, and it's great to be part of this environment here with the ship, because it is on that journey. And there'll be rough seas and there'll be smooth seas and there'll be whatever. And I'm not saying that there's parts of it where sometimes we have to do it on our own, but the reality of achieving success is through for me, it's co-creation. And it's building that team. But it's not just any team.
Right.
It's building a team who are coming at it from different perspectives. Because for me, my best time, my best learning is when I'm totally out of my comfort zone.
Right.
So bringing people on the team who challenge my thought process every day is a wonderful day. So it's not a team for the sake of a team. It's a team who bring the right culture to the thinking process. It's a team who are collectively driving forward. And it's a team who say, let's challenge each other positively. That's what we're looking for.
A lot when I look back at my youth as well, let's say it this way, that, you're in the midst of everybody is trying to be creative. Let's put it this way. If you're studying business, if you're studying something else, you're studying arts, and everybody wants to identify themselves, the individuality of it, right? But how do you combine that together if you want to build up a team? How do you determine that, okay, we are two different people, yet again, we have the same ambition, but in our own regard, but how do you connect in order to make the journey easier for both or for other people as well?
And that's a really interesting perspective, and thank you for asking that. And I suppose for me, it's something I'm actually driving on at the minute, because it's about bringing together both sides of the brain.
Right.
And it's about looking at it from a neuroscience perspective. So it's bringing the cognitive with the neuro, and it's about integrating those to see how they can ignite one another. Because if we're looking at using a brain side that's dominant on the right or the left, again, we will succeed, but not to the optimum level. But when we bring forward teams and we allow people to understand that I am different to you and you are different to me, and to appreciate that difference, then together we will thrive. So that to me is absolutely opportune when you're bringing people together who have different activities, different ways of doing things. And again, it's, somebody could be very data driven.
Right.
They may not necessarily, in that case, they prefer to work the data. They want to really get embedded with it, and they try not to get involved in the social side of it. But then somebody who's more socially driven can challenge what that data can look like.
Right.
And then the conversations start, and conversations is where it all happens.
Definitely. And how much do you think, obviously, ego is everything, but how much do you think the ego plays a part in letting go?
That's a good one, because the ego is one of our best friends and our biggest enemies.
Correct.
And I guess from an individual perspective, what I have got to look out for is my own ego. It's the most tormenting partner that I could ever have in my life, because it's forever, trying to knock me down, and I say no, and I have to continuously challenge that thought process. So the ego in letting go is how early we allowed others to come on board.
Right.
So the later I leave that to happen in the journey, absolutely, the harder it is to let go.
Right. Thank you for answering that. It's always, because I love that mind is a very interesting, let's say, very interesting you that is around you that you don't realize, because we just believe we are we alone, so to speak. But yet again, there's somebody else besides you.
Absolutely.
And that gets me to a point. What are you really looking for in the competitor the most at the pitch captain competition, being as a judge?
I'm fundamentally looking for whereby the ideas, number one, are clearly thought through. So for me, understanding the absolute kernel of the issue, getting into that nth degree of what is it that we're really trying to look at, number one. And having identified that, then to look at where is the added value from a social perspective, cultural perspective, and an economic. Because sustainability, we spoke earlier on about money being a go or a no-go.
Correct.
Economics will come and they'll go, and so many variables at play and all the rest of it. But if we're looking for genuine succession planning and sustainability, we have to see social and cultural impact 100%.
Right. Well, I hope and I wish the best to the competitors, and let's see what happens for sure. And as we're coming towards the end of our podcast, I would like to have some of your words for the Ship Startup Festival. That any words, any advice, anything that you want to present to the youth, particularly, or to the startups, to the completely new entrepreneurs, what should they be looking at? How can they change their mindset, whatever mindset they're coming from, in order to succeed?
I guess for me, so first and foremost, can I just say I've been really impressed since the minute I arrived here. It's just a fantastic environment, and the vibe is amazing. But my advice would be is just look at the fire in your belly. Have you got the fire in your belly? And when I talk about that fire, I talk about, have you got the focus? Have you got the inspiration and the capacity to be inspired?
Right.
when I look at the R, I talk about, have you got the resilience and the resourcefulness to go forward? And when I talk about the E, it can represent so much. But for me, it's about being empathetic. Have you got the capacity to think in somebody else's shoes, others' perspective? So I would always say to anybody when you're getting involved in this space, have you got the fire in your belly? And if you've got the fire in your belly, you're going to ignite that. But more importantly, you're going to ignite it in everybody else who joins you.
Correct.
So the flame gets bigger and brighter.
Correct. Thank you very much. I mean, before, glad that you brought up focus, because I wanted to definitely discuss with you about focus as well. Because in my line of work, or basically any line of work, it's not just that. I was referring it to myself, that focus has been one of the most crucial aspects for my life, in a way that due to being in the creative world as being a musician, the focus shifts very, very fast. And once that happens, you don't get anything done. And that's a fight that you have within yourself constantly, no matter what. Today, if right now, as we're doing the podcast, oh, did I leave the stove on? Focus shifts. And that's just a very funny example. But yet again, it could be another focus as well. Oh, did I lock my car? Oh, did I leave this there? Oh, did that happen? So how to build that focus completely, even if you do have the fire in your belly, you know this is it for you. For instance, for me, music has been it. But then, as the survival mode comes in, once you drop out in the COVID time, you can't do the live shows and so on. Your focus shifts. So how to maintain that? Let's say it this way.
I guess so. First and foremost, it's about looking at the moment in time. So as long as we're looking in the rear view mirror, we're looking that way. As long as we're wondering what's going to happen tomorrow, we're looking that way. Just stay in the now. Mm-hmm. So the focus is just to give yourself the privilege of staying in the now. And for me, I used to be, my dad would have called me Miss Malaprop. Malapropism is about using big words in the wrong places.
Right.
I still do. But I remember I got a watch from Santa. Mm-hmm. And on the gift it said, procrastination is the thief of time. So I thought, I don't know what this thing means. So I decided I better look up what the word procrastination meant. Mm-hmm. And I was going to be very proud then that I could say what I knew what it meant when we discussed it later. But anyway, I didn't realise they were all upstairs looking at me with my dictionary at the time, looking up the word procrastination. But the reason I'm telling that story is it has stayed with me since then, because it is the thief of time. And as long as I'm continuously doing something else and I'm not putting attention to what I need to do, I got to just step back and say why. Because I clearly amn't passionate about it. Because if I'm finding every other reason to do something other than what I'm doing right now, or need to do right now, then it's not the most important thing to me. So what we look at as well, and I guess that's where I'm even doing my own work at the moment with neuroscience and the mindset, is to really understand how to give something its attention, how to stay focused and how to stay in the moment.
Right.
And that really is us to question what's most important for me right now. So finally, just on that as well, to me, it goes back to how strong I am in myself. And it goes back to that concept of self again, right? So we talked about the right and the left side of the brain. I also talk about the meeting of the minds. So as long as I'm wondering what's going on in your head, you've got control. I'm in your mind. I'm not in my mind. I'm constantly thinking how you're going to react to what I'm going to say, or how this relationship is going, or whatever. So at that point in time, I have no focus. You're in full control. I've given you that control.
Right.
But that may well be because I've come into the meeting and I'm tired, I'm exhausted, I haven't got things organised, there's so much going on in my life. So what Da Vinci would say is sharpen the saw. Get back in touch with who you are and make sure that you are physically and mentally well. Right. Because quite often, if you reflect when their focus is somewhere else, that's because the mind's too busy and you're not taking time out to protect the self. That typically is what the reason is. So for me, it's sharpen the saw.
Right, self-care, utmost important.
Absolutely, yeah.
For sure. That was just going to be my next thing as well, as being, I love to study, as particularly, of course, I don't go to any university or college or something like this, but due to the lovely access of our technology, it's up to you how you use it. Either you can watch TikTok videos and have a good time, or just, you can go in the YouTube hole of getting whichever content that you want. But then again, it could be full of knowledge as well. It's up to you. But then again, sometimes it happens to be the case that once I deep dive into it, it becomes hard for me to get out because I want to get to know this, get to know that. And that takes away the time on the things that you ought to be doing. But it's nothing bad because you're learning. You're constantly learning. But then the application, when the time comes, is way more easier for me to do because I've gotten that knowledge, I've gotten that information that I've stored, and then I apply. But that time, how would you define that time? Is it lost? The thing that you were supposed to do by a certain deadline, but you went in the rabbit hole and kept on, grasping everything because you're like, if I don't watch it right now, I might not get back to it. And that happens with me many times. For instance, if I watch some podcasts or I get to see a documentary and I have to stop it because I need to concentrate on something else. And I finish that work, but then again, I never come back to it. So that focus drifts, though it's taking time from the thing that I'm supposed to do. How would you determine that? There's no good or bad, but...
And here we have the ego coming in. I should have, when you start using that word, I should have, stop for a second and say, should have what? Why is that word should appearing in my vocabulary? Because that's the ego talking. So what we have to look at and say is that fundamentally any quest of knowledge is never lost. It's a journey of knowledge and knowledge acquisition, and an informed mind is a powerful mind. So to understand that knowledge is power is really important. And to see the fact that we do go down a rabbit hole and we see it perhaps as a rabbit hole, but if I actually see it as being, wow, that's taken me into a space I would never have realised. That's no rabbit hole. That's meant to be. That's opportune. But it's whether I choose to let that opportunity go and just do my number on myself by saying I should have.
Right.
Or I say, oh, look what I just realised. Wow, you've just opened a new door.
Right.
So it's how you look at it. And again, it's back to flip the coin. You can see it from the negative perspective, or we can look at it and say, right, this is okay, it happened. Yeah, and okay, there are times, don't get me wrong, there are times that I have to say to myself, why am I constantly putting something? There's generally a reason for me putting it back. Right. If I actually were to be honest with you, because I just don't want to do it. Just don't want to do it. Right? Or there may be a threat to my ego if I do it and it's not top notch.
Right.
And right now I can't cope with that being said to me, so I'll just put it back for another while. There's generally a reason, but what we don't do is give our time to step back and reflect. I'm doing that more and more, and I'm becoming less impulsive on the strength of it, and I certainly am just giving myself a break and saying, yeah, that's okay. But for me, and I live by the line, I actually have it up in my house at home, ancora impora, which is forever learning. So Latin for meaning forever learning. So every moment's a learning moment. It's just whether you let the ego take over or whether you take power.
Correct. Well, very nicely put. And thank you so very much, Breda, for talking with me today and being here. And I wish you a great trip to Kaakkois. Well, we are right here. And I hope you're going to have a great day. And it's going to be exciting to see how the competition goes.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to it. And thank you very much indeed. And thanks to Mina and Sabina. It's been wonderful. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you.